everyone, welcome back to the Jardin. Today we are just going to talk a little bit more of like the meaning of the podcast, go kind of deeper into the gardens in the Bible and kind of how they relate to everyday life. So we'll just jump right in.
Okay, I'm going to let you start it.
And another thing I wanted to do was like, I don't think I even told you this.
Okay.
Well. But I wanted to kind of start each podcast episode with like, because it's kind of like highs and lows, and so the Jardin is like your rose and your thorn for each week. Like your high and your low, your rose and your thorn. So I already thought about mine. I'll give you a minute.
Well, I don't know. You just kind of sprung this one on me. So you're wanting to know like a rose and a thorn, so a high and a low.
And I think this week mine are kind of the same because it was kind of like a bittersweet moment. We signed Della up for school this week to start like pre-K next year. So that was kind of like a rose and thorn all together because I'm like, oh, I'm so excited for her, but also it's kind of bittersweet because I was like, oh, I'm just like want to take in our slow mornings even more now because I know they're going to be
a lot more fast paced.
Yeah, a lot more stressful and not as slow and easy. Wake up whenever we can, make breakfast together. So I'm just trying to enjoy really that while it's here. Yeah,
enjoy the warm weather and all that.
Yeah, so that was like my rose and thorn all in one.
My highs, like my rose, I guess is the way you put it.
Yeah, would
be more so like, just having that moment whenever you wake up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, you have a little bit of peace, and you're like really just kind of sit back, reflect on everything. But also at the same time, that is like a thorn, because like you're sitting there reflecting back on everything from the like past week or the day before, of things that you're like, oh, this is where I messed up yesterday or the day before. But also where it's like God has enough grace to show you to like be like, okay, well, this is something I can move forward at. I can try to do better at today. Today's a new day. Let's start a new day. So that's kind of like, I guess, would be my like rose and thorn type thing. It's like you see where you mess up, and it hurts knowing that you possibly hurt somebody that you really loved and cared about, or stuff like that, where you just messed up. That's your thorn. But knowing that it's a new day because God shows so much grace that you get to try again. That's the plus side of it. Okay, so there you go. Now you know about our rose and thorn for both of us for this week so far, and to try to move forward and try to hopefully not have too many thorns this week. Have nothing but roses.
Yes. So now we'll kind of go in a little bit more about the gardens. The first one we kind of touched on last week was the Garden of Eden. And when I think of like the Garden of Eden, like just try to think like the most beautiful place you've ever been. And I kind of think of like going out west. That's like our favorite place.
I loved it out west.
And I think of like, what is it? The Teton Mountains there. Like, that's just, like, the most beautiful view to me. Like,
especially whenever you can back away and get out of the valley and get up on top of a mountain.
You see just how big they are.
And you can see the Tetons in the background through the valley and stuff. Yeah. But, I mean, I guess that can go with everything in life, Sometimes you're going to be in a valley.
Yeah.
It's hard to get out. You got to climb to be able to get back up to the mountain and see where you've been. And so you can try to get back on top.
Yeah.
I see highs and lows again right there.
Yeah, I think it relates a lot. But the thinking of the Garden of Eden just being like this ultimate, happy, most beautiful place, living with God. He's walking there with you, like you're in His presence. And then even, I think, maybe, I don't know, but I think like Adam and Eve, they sort of thought they lived in this bubble and like, oh, we're here with God, nothing bad can happen,
Everything's as perfect as it can ever be. This was created by God, so it's like, there's nothing that could touch me.
But then the serpent comes, and I mean, it's like the ultimate betrayal, and they partake of the forbidden fruit. And I think that can kind of relate to our lives, like how
easy
it is
can be look or portrayed to look so innocent or so sweet or pretty that you might not think that, hey, this is a bad thing, like I shouldn't do this. And you take it or you do whatever, and then you have to have consequences, and that's sin, that you have to deal with then. But you better be thankful that God has enough grace and mercy to shine down on you to help you, but you don't need to follow back and go back to it. But that's, what you're talking about. Like it's, it looks like a certain way. Like they thought they was in a bubble, like everything was perfect.
Yeah, like nothing can go wrong here, and then that's how quick something can
just change.
Detour you.
And that's everything in everyday life. Yeah. I mean, it can be to where everything can be so smooth sailing, just perfect, and just that quick something happens, and then it just derails you. Satan gets you sidetracked, and next thing you know, you're off in left field. You ain't even paying attention to what you should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
And it gets you distracted.
Yeah. And then the other one, the next important garden, would be the Garden of Gethsemane. And I think, when we think of the Garden of Gethsemane, we just go straight to, that's where Jesus went before he got crucified. Where he went to pray before he got crucified. But that wasn't just the only time that Jesus went there. That was like his place that he always went to pray. It wasn't just that one random time. So I think that's was an important place to him.
And and I think that it's very important, you're talking about that was Jesus' place to go pray, where he really put thought into stuff. I think that everybody needs to have a place to go. For me, I'm a big time hunter. So, my place is to go to the woods. And it's so much that you can be just less distracted by. You would think, though, being in the woods, you hear birds chirping, squirrels barking, everything running around, rustling in the leaves, that it would distract you. But it's, for a hunter, it's like a calming. And it just puts you at peace. And that's where, whenever you're sitting there by yourself like that, you start really realizing what all God has really done for you, what he's created. And my favorite time is to go and see, like deer hunting in the morning time, and it's to see the sun coming up. Same thing with turkey season. It's fixing to be present right here. To be going out there and sit, just listening, and hear an owl start hooting, and then sun coming up, and a turkey start gobbling, birds chirping. That really makes me feel kind of like Easter time, like when God wrote, like Jesus was risen from the dead, It really makes you just sit there and really just enjoy him more. And you can sit there and just thank him for everything that he's done. You just pray to him. I think when you're
outdoors, you kind of just are more aware of he created this.
But it's so easy, though, for people to, that don't hunt or that don't really want to go to the woods that much, for them to be outside and get so busy and caught up, just going up and down the road all the time. They never glance and look out their window to see what God's done for them. Yeah. And, I know that in today's world, everything is so much more fast-paced compared to what it was, back whenever I was a child growing up. Everything was slower paced then. But even with everything,
just take a moment.
Everybody's so just ready to get to the next move. They're just ready to keep jumping and going and going. And there's nothing wrong with striving and being successful, and having a great drive, because I have a very strong will to push very hard on certain things.
Yeah.
But before you start pushing hard and trying to drive and go towards something, you better take a moment, sit back, pray, make sure this is God's will, and make sure that, He's directing you in this path. If not, jump ship, get out of there, don't do that one, go find something else to do. You don't need to do something out of God's will, because that's going to, I mean, I'm speaking from experience, like, you try to do something and it's not in God's will, it's going to hurt you so bad, mentally, physically, financially, everything will just start falling down around you. So it's better to just take a moment, pray about it, try to figure out what. And, that's kind of how I relate with, like, Jesus, kind of going to the garden, that him having a place like that.
A place, yeah. So I think it's important for everybody to find a place. And I think outdoors is a great place.
But now, it don't have
doesn't
to be
have to be
outdoors.
outdoors.
It can
That's what I'm
be,
saying. A lot of people say like their closet or
it can be like how I was talking about the rose and the thorn. Like I like to sit and drink a cup of coffee. That could be a lot of people that love to drink a cup of coffee. They could sit down in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, and pray and have that moment. With God.
I just think it's neat to know that He had a place too.
Yeah, and it's one of them things you need to have the place. Yeah. That's where you can feel comfort a little bit more.
And then we'll move on to the next one, which would be the Garden of Golgotha. And this one is kind of like where there's a garden close to where Jesus was crucified, and which would seem like, the saddest place. And where they found his tomb, there was an empty tomb there, and they buried his body in that garden there, close to that garden. And then, of course, 3 days later he was resurrected. So it seemed like the low, this low.
And I'm fixing to reference back to the woods again. You're talking about, how that's where he was buried and stuff, and you think like, oh, it's a bad place, like it's a low,
But then it surpasses when he's resurrected.
It's like what I was talking about a second ago, being able to go sit out there in the woods and watch everything God created come to life, and how exciting that is. But also, like whenever Julia was pregnant with Madeline, and it was during hunting season and stuff, and I would try to escape and go to the woods, trying to pray, trying to do stuff like that, and it turned into one of them places for me to where I was like, I'm not having fun hunting. I can't see God right now in this situation. Like, it's nothing but pain, misery, hurt. Like, it turned in where my place was a safe place, turned into a low place for me. Yeah. Kind of like what you're talking about. You think, like, this is a low place in this garden. And that's what it turned into, was a low place for me. And, it's just so hard to get back on track from losing a child and finding out all kind of things.
That's where my mind kind of went to. I kind of think of, like, the hospital. Like, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I do not like going to a hospital.
After we had her, I'm like, I'll never be able to come here again. Like, how could I? And then I even had, like, fear with when we had Della. I'm like, I just don't want to go back in there because it's just going to bring that back. And
you're so worried the whole time. Like, whenever we was pregnant with Della. You're so worried the whole time. Is this baby going to be okay? Like, is she going to have something wrong? And then they come in there and say, okay, y'all going to have to start going to a specialist again. So then your mind really reverts back again.
Her whole
We're fixing to relive all of this once again. I don't think I can mentally take this no more. And then you're sitting here and you're praying and praying and praying and praying and begging God even to just please save this child, keep this child safe, and then, go to the hospital, the place that you despised, did not want to ever go back to. You're scared to death. I'm scared. We're both scared. We're sitting there waiting knew we was having a little girl, and she comes out, and that was probably one of the happiest moments
I'm saying, like,
that it turned into.
It was like the lowest place, and then the highest place.
It turned from one of the lowest places that I've ever been to, of having literally the wind knock out of you, where you can't even think, breathe, anything when you go through a situation like that. And then all of a sudden you have a beautiful baby sitting there crying, and you most time you think crying baby sends you on the edge, but it was like the most beautiful sound I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I even thought the whole time while having Della, like, my, like, motto or mantra during her labor was, like, this pain is temporary. Like, there's, you know, and that's how I think, like, Jesus looked at that situation, like, you know, everybody's mourning his death, and he's like, you know, this is temporary.
Yeah.
And so he knew he was coming back, you know, he was going to be resurrected, but they didn't know. And I think the same for that, like,
we didn't know that God was going to turn around
and bless us two
again,
more times with two
beautiful, sweet little loving girls. Like,
yeah.
you know, I never pictured myself as a girl dad. Like, I didn't, but I feel like I'm doing a great job being a girl dad, and because those little girls, you know, that any child, you know, is a true gift from God. Like, there's nothing in this world to me that I can even come close to thinking of that would be more so of a gift from God himself, that you get to. That, to me, that's like the closest you can get to seeing something that he created for just you. Like, just you, not anybody else, but just you. And, like, even you can see yourself in your child. You can see your spouse in your child. So it's like, that's the true ultimate gift from God. You know, other than, like, being saved. And then, like, with me, like, I'm all for being successful, you know, and trying to be, you know, leave a legacy behind as, you know, for my kids, you know, stuff like that. But if I had one more last prayer to pray that would be for my kids, is for them to know, hey, my daddy was a man of God. Like, he really talked to us about that. He tried to pray with us. You know, he wanted us to know that and have that relationship with God. And that's what I want my kids to remember me by whenever, you know, it's my final day. And everybody gets that backwards. They don't think, you know, hey, this is what I need to leave behind to my kids. They're always thinking of an inheritance of this.
Really, the only thing you can leave your kids,
and it don't cost nothing. It literally costs nothing to talk to your child, read them storybooks about God. You know, like, you can constantly just plug things in all the time for them, and you know that's
the most important thing.
Yeah.
You just want your kids to be
healthy and happy
and with you in heaven.
Yeah, that's what you want them to do. So, and within today's world, I mean, I've seen where it's got worse. So, I think now is more important than ever that you need to, like, really drive that home in your own home with your kid, you know, that, hey, this is the person you turn to. You turn to God. If you have trouble, have a problem, that's who you turn to. He'll help you fix whatever there is. And you may not see it, like,
you're not going to see
in human mind, like, we think, like, man, we need something to happen like now.
Right
like,
now.
You know, it's just human nature. That's the way, especially if you have a high drive of success, thinking, you know, that this is going to happen. You know, that's not how God's timing is. You know, he may make you wait for years. And I know this is getting a little off subject, but it's like, you know, making us wait. Like, you know, I was big on, like, setting 1-year goals, 5-year goals, 10-year goals, even 30-year goals, you know, and, you know, I had it in my mind when I first met my wife, you know, okay, we're getting married at this age, then in 5 years, we're going to have a kid, we're going to have our house, we're going to have land, we're going to do all that, we'll have everything situated, and then we can progress and move forward, and then at 10 years, this is what we're going to do, you know. Like, I had all this in my head. This is what I'm talking about, you know, God making you wait.
Yeah.
And because, like, with Madeline, you know, it did not work. Like, she's already in heaven with God now. And, you know, we didn't have a house. Every door was getting shut on the house that we was trying to buy or build or, you know, wanting to buy land. Like, just everything was getting shut down around us. Could not work out. Nothing. Yeah. And then, all of a sudden, I made a phone call to a guy that I had previously talked to a year before about buying land. That was like, no, dead set, like, you know, not going to sell any land to you. And so I called him back in about a year, and it was right after we had lost Madeline. And I said, hey, I don't want to buy all of your property. Can I just buy some of it? And he told me no, and I said, okay, I appreciate it. You know, I was taking that as an answer as no, like, you're not going to buy anything. And he turned around and told me, he said, you either buy it all or don't buy any of my land. And I said, okay. And I was like, how in the world can I buy that? Like, I wasn't looking for 200 acres of land. And I was like, this is like not what I prayed for. I prayed for trying to buy 100 acres of land. Now it's double. Yeah. I'm like, there's no way I can afford this. And he said, make me an offer. And I said, all right, I'll make you an offer.
We've had that conversation before. That's like, we asked for one healthy child. We have two now. We asked for... And we wanted 100 acres of land, so we've been blessed with 200 acres of land. Like,
and then, like, you know, we wanted a house.
Doubled our...
And we wanted a house.
Yeah.
Well, we already had a house on this property, but we weren't able to salvage it, so we had to burn it down.
And it was a 2-bedroom. This one's a 4-bedroom.
So and then you know,
a lot of hidden blessings.
So we get the land. That was by grace of God. Like, it was just meant to be, you know, that we bought this. Like, it was... I'm not taking any credit for that because every door had got shut for us in the past. So, like, I knew this was meant to be. So we bought that, and it's during COVID. So, like, we're having a hard time during all that, trying to work. And then my wife finds out she's pregnant, and we buy a trailer, and it's a nice trailer. Like, we thought it was a 3-bedroom whenever, like, I first heard about it. Turned out it was a 4-bedroom. Yeah. So we get the land, we get the house. I turn around and I have to sell my truck because I'm like, it was jacked up. I'm like, this is not going to work for
a baby.
So I sold that truck, got a different truck, and then turned around and we had our little girl on our 5-year anniversary. And that's where I'm talking about God makes you wait.
Yeah.
How the whole point of, like, God making you wait based off of Him versus us is I had this 5-year plan. And then our little girl was born on our 5-year anniversary. And I was like, man, God's got a sense of humor. Like, He literally made us wait until the last day. Like, our little girl was born on our 5-year anniversary. And I'm like, He didn't let me do everything that I was wanting to do. Like, it was the very last year in my 5-year goal that He started letting everything start taking place. But it was like more so, it's like, quit trying to do it on your own. You're going to rely on me. Yeah. Or either I'm not gonna even talk to you about this. Like, kind of like a parent and a child. Like, quit trying to do something. Just listen to me and I'll help you. Yeah. And, you know, that's how it is with kids. Like, kids... you know, think, hey, I can do this on my own, even though you're like, hey, I know what's better for you. Just let me help you. I can do this. But that's what I was talking about. You know, like, you got to be patient. You got to wait for God's plan, His time.
I think that ties it all back into, like, again, the highs and lows, because obviously that's a big theme in our lives, is that the lows seems so low, and then it's like God blessed us double of that, you know.
And it's not that
and so that was like...
And I think sometimes, you know, kind of like Job, like, I mean, you know, like, he had everything literally taken away, and then he got double of everything. Yeah. And I mean, that's not what I thought, and now we have two little girls instead of like where we lost Madeline, which was one little girl. Now we have two little girls with us. That's, I mean, you can literally just sit back and look at everything that God has done for us, and He's literally sat and doubled down on everything for us.
Yeah.
That, you know, you can't do nothing but thank Him for it.
That's what I'm saying. It's
and
just
even
like, it seemed
whenever,
like such a low,
and whenever you get in a hard time, and you think, oh man, the walls are coming in on me again, like I'm getting suffocated down, just take a moment, sit back, think like, hey, God's brought me through these things that I thought was unbearable. There's no way I can get through it again. He got you through those. He'll get you through this, which is a minor thing. Like, He can get you through whatever, as long as you rely on Him to do it. But most people don't want to rely on Him to do it because it's just human nature to just do something.
Do it yourself.
And if you do something and you could see God involved in it, don't take any credit for it. Make sure you give Him the credit for that. That He's because as easy as He gave you something, He can easily take it away from you. Yeah. And so, you know, you just need to be grateful and thankful. But it can just, you know, it's like you was talking about that where he was buried, you know, and it turns into such a low place, but then again, it turned into a high place because like he was risen and like
resurrected there, and Mary sees him there, and just like what a moment.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, this is way before my time, but I'm sure in her eyes, she was just amazed and thought, "This is like a miracle, like getting to see my son again." Like, you know, it's the same thing like I was talking about, like in the woods. For me, like it was such a high place for me, and then it turned into such a low place, and it took years for me to get back to that. To this is a high place again for me, you know, and you just need to have your place where you can go, and that's the main thing I kind of feel like in this episode is talking about, like our highs and lows. Like you need to make sure you have a place to go, and
to get you through those.
And you know, it's the garden. Like there's so many different things that you can just look at in the garden to reference to your own life if you'll just really just sit and think about it for just if you take just 5 minutes to sit and think.
And that's why this is like such a, I don't know, like not divine intervention, but like it just was like such an aha moment of like this idea just kind of like came into my mind a long time ago, and then it was like Jardin, well, you know, like then I started looking into the gardens of the Bible, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's just meant to be, you know.
And this is something that I would have never thought like I would be sitting here talking like something like this. Like this is, if you know me and you know who I am, I'm the last person you would ever think to sit behind the camera, like wanna like, you know, talk and do like. This is something I feel like though God has like really pushed hard towards me and Julia to like, we need to talk about this kind of stuff. Like, you know, maybe it will help somebody. Like that's all we're doing this for, is just hoping that hopefully this will help somebody else in life. Like things that we've went through and had hardships with that we'll touch on later on. You know, we're hoping that maybe some of this will really help people that don't open up and want to talk.
Alright, so I feel like we went a little more into depth on, you know, more of the meaning of where this idea of the Jardin came from, and, you know, get to know a little more about the gardens in the Bible and how they relate to our lives. And I just think it's, even though it's thousands and thousands of years ago, it seems like it wouldn't be relatable, but it still is.
Yeah, I mean, it's still, like you're talking about relatable, I mean,
we still go through the same
you still don't have all kind of
there's still sin and betrayal, and there's loneliness, and there's all those things, but then there's the highs of those also, getting to see the beautiful things and getting to have a place where you feel comfortable to pray to God and having, knowing that He was risen again, and, we're coming up on Easter, and that's always one of my favorite holidays, and just the meaning behind it. It's just...
but you're saying like that's your favorite thing, like Easter, and you think everybody probably thinks like Christmas is
when he was born,
the favorite time when he was born, when he was a baby, like because everybody loves baby, they don't love death, And
but it's the resurrection.
Easter is like the resurrection, like after he died, like
and
that's
what I think, like the low
for
and
him
the high.
to save, like you to be saved, like so, like really and truly, that's probably the ultimate thing is that because
he paid the ultimate price.
That you think about yourself, like could you have been even willing to put yourself through the stuff he put himself through? And anybody that says they're crazy. Like there's no way that you could do that. And so he's the only one that could have ever done that for us. And for him to be willing to put himself through that for somebody that is going to be born thousands of years later, it's crazy though that he's willing, that somebody, Jesus, God, was willing to do that for each and every one of us, So it's like, I guess that's the end of kind of wrapping it up on, him dying and being resurrected right there, in that garden. And so we've touched on the gardens now.
Yes, I think we'll just kind of keep that underlying theme.
But we're going to talk about...
that is our life, and that's what I said, earlier, the
like
highs
a garden,
and the lows.
You're going to be growing, you're going to be dying off in a garden. So, you're going to have all of those steps and process through a garden.
Yeah,
so
we're going to get to share our story and our highs and lows.
From all the way back to...
get to know us a little better.
Yeah, so that way you can see what we're all about, really. So that's kind of... We're just going to talk on stuff every time about things we've went through in life and our highs and lows, and
how
then
God
we'll
gets
talk
you
about
through them.
Every week, things that go on during every week and stuff like that, and that's kind of going to be like what we talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm excited too.
Yeah,
I'm anxious to see what
what
God does with all this.
With this, yes.
But
okay, we'll see you next time.